Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Good morning, Emmanuel.
Good morning, Ruben, once again.
Second time.
Yes. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. Ruben, you see why I bring my copy of the Electoral Act. Yes. Now you are able to fact check. Anyway, that's just an aside. Now let's start the review with this day Nigeria's newspaper of record. The lead story, Tinubu, my certificate of return is called to duty I can't ignore. Tells opponents, their supporters, I understand your hurt. Says he needs them, but Nigeria needs them more at this time. Reiterates commitment to progress, development, renewal of hope for Nigerians. Election results reflects wish of electorate. Akeredolu asserts. Yakasai urges Atiku Obi to accept outcome of presidential poll. Will challenge ex-governor's victory in court. Baba Ahmed vows. Knox. Lawan over comments on electronic transmission of results. Exercise lacks credibility. Transparency. Situation room declares. Of course, Situation room, the civil society group that also monitored the election around the country. Now, just above the lead story, Buhari, my administration's achievement and Tinubu victory. Former Lagos governor pays thank you visit to president in Daura. President-elect receives congratulatory messages from world leaders, including French president, to put that on record, where it was said that only Sunak, Richie Sunak, has congratulated the president-elect. Now, of course, Tinubu's speech yesterday after receiving the certificate of return and his visit to President Muhammadu Buhari in Daura. Of course, the president, assuming, telling the world that all the election went very well. Was it that it wasn't brief, as was being suggested earlier? I don't think so, because only yesterday, a serving member of the National Assembly was charged to court in Kano for his action on election day when he led groups to attack people in which 3 persons died. So that legislator is facing the law, because when that video went viral, the commissioner of police in Kano State had to act. And that legislator has been arrested and he has been charged to court for his role in the attack on people on election day. Now, the Guardian newspaper reporting this story, Tinubu extend olive branch, invites youth to rescue Nigeria, while the leadership newspaper, Tinubu seeks Atiku Obi others support for greater Nigeria. Of course, the Nation newspaper, I hear you loud and clear. President-elect tells youths, of course, young Nigerians will get full attention. Tinubu promises good governance, functional economy, security. President-elect, VP-elect got certificate of return. Of course, Tinubu's message to the youth, I'm sure he was talking to the obedience. Of course, he referred to all of them. Obedience, Kwankwasiyas, articulated, and with particular reference to the youths, many of whom were the driving force behind the Peter Obi phenomenon. I hear you loud and clear. Well, I hope the youths will respond, because if the feeling that their votes were not reflected in the announced outcome of the election, I don't know how these youths will respond to this clarion call from the president-elect. Now, the Punch newspaper, Tinubu woos Atiku Obi as parties reject result. PDP, LP, NNPP, others refuse to sign election result sheet in Abuja. Buhari, Osinbajo, UK, ECOWAS, Senate, governors congratulate president-elect. Obi campaign mounts legal battle as Tinubu visits Buhari in Daura. Now, the New Telegraph newspaper, Tinubu receives certificate of return, while the Nigerian Tribune newspaper, I will work to make Nigeria better, quoting Tinubu there. We will retrieve, below the photograph, on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, we will retrieve our mandate. Atiku Okowa campaign vows Labour Party to fight the injustice, vice presidential candidate. The Daily Trust newspaper, presidential poll, Atiku Obi head to court as Tinubu pledges fairness. NNPP demands cancellation as Asiwaju visits Buhari in Daura. UK Prime Minister Osinbajo, IBB, Arewa Consultative Forum congratulate President-elect. Now, the foreign newspapers quickly. The Financial Times the Financial Times has a photograph of course, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. This is 5 photographs, as it were, doing the thumbs up. And the story there, thumbs up, Tinubu pledges Nigerian, Tinubu edges Nigerian poll. Of course, the Financial Times reporting the Nigerian election there. With Tinubu, thumbs up, the man who has picked of course, who won the election as announced by the Independent National Electoral Commission. But other stories, the front page of the Financial Times, Bailey seeks to take it out of market expectations for further rate increases. Bank of England chief urges caution. Economy evolving as expected. House price fall, biggest for decades. Yes. Now, the Wall Street Journal is reporting inflation worries drive up treasury yields. And, of course, another report there in the front page of the Wall Street Journal, robust U.S. labor market shows fresh signs. Rufai, Ayo, and Robert.
Okay, I mean, a couple of the papers, saying what happened yesterday, and largely congratulations have started to come in from the international community, to the president-elect. I saw Rishi Sunak, congrats yesterday. I saw the United States congrats, but it was very, very measured. After congratulating him, they called for calm. They also talked about the fact that there were quite some irregularities in the process. I think it was a State Department report that came out, and that also talked about, what is happening in the country as we speak today, but most importantly called for calm, as that people should look forward to the 11th of March elections. President Macron, although I've not seen the official message of President Macron, but Nigeria and France, go a long way back, and if you remember historically, I think our first back and forth were as regards the nuclear testings in the Sahara in the 60s, and that really affected the relationship between Nigeria and France. But since then, we've been able to patch up things. So congratulations are coming in from the world leaders, although some people will say it ought to have come in immediately, but it took a couple of hours after. But I'm sure once the certificate of return has been given, then the world leaders will be able to take suit and follow suit. He made a lot of promises. He said he wanted to reach out to the youth. At first, this was more measured because he stuck to the script. There's something called sticking on message. It was different from the very first engagement, where he called somebody a gorilla. I can still get that off my mind. I don't know why. That was very unpresidential anyway. And the fact that, he tried to address concerns, say the things he will do, connect with the people and all of that he wants to be their president too, and all of that was quite measured, calling for peace and solidarity. And after that, he went to see President Muhammadu Buhari, and President Muhammadu Buhari probably gave us the shocker of our lives by saying that nothing happened, nobody died, nothing happened, and somebody will wonder that did President Buhari take out time to read the papers? Because Dr. Abati kept on saying his advisors. I even feel more shocked, and I cringed, and I'm sure if I checked my blood pressure when you said that, it will have spiked, because a leader is supposed to be able to get his own ready-made first-hand information. That I will have thought, for what it's worth, that the president of a largely young country too should have been going through social media at that point when the election was happening. Or probably his phone was seized, or maybe his phone has no internet connection. Or the president should also be watching television, like we see other presidents in the world do. They should also be able to read the paper to ventilate the pulse of the people. If I'm commander-in-chief and I only depend on what my advisors tell me about the pulse of the people, then it's a sad reality, really. You should be able to ventilate the pulse of the people. So I'm shocked, because for him to be able to say, oh, goodness me, nothing happened, it was all free and fair and all of that, then that leaves much to be desired. But on the flip side of the argument, a lot of people will say, what do you expect him to say? A man that, was in charge of these elections will not say the elections, are bad. And you see, when you look at our public space today in Nigeria, we don't really have men. Gone are the days, Yorubas have a saying, Ilenjeyon. What it means that the ground keeps taking good people from us. You don't have men like Umar Musa Yar'Adua that can stand up tall and come out to say that the elections that brought me into power were fraught with irregularities. You don't have men like that any longer. So what do you expect President Muhammadu Buhari to be able to say? That he will definitely commend the elections. But on the flip side of the argument, a lot of people in their camp and the APC will commend the elections, but the international community have also been talking about the elections. The observer bodies have been saying otherwise about the elections. And on the flip side of that, there's been a lot of press conference yesterday. The Labour Party and the PDP, are saying that they're going to fight this, like you saw there in the Tribune newspaper, that they're going to fight this, that they're going to look for all means possible to be able to fight this. But it's quite fluid. After all is said and done, we have a country to build, because either ways, the sad reality is that despite these elections, we're all Nigerians. That's one thing we share in common. Both the oppressors and the oppressed are still citizens of this great country called Nigeria. And as a patriot, I'll say there is nothing more important than building this our land. So whatever solutions we're going to find to this, definitely we need to have the courage to also think of our great country. And that's why I'd like to salute the Nigerian people for the calm. And please, let us maintain the peace. Let us keep this, going. The process will go on. They'll challenge this. Let's see what the court will say. But, the judiciary should also know that, yes, in their judgment, people are also watching. INEC should also know that in their decisions, people are also watching and people have taken notes. And for us to build this collective country, a country that works is a country where peace and justice truly reign. We say something, and we would like to ask the question this morning. I think our national anthem says, to serve with heart and might, to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. With all the things happening in Nigeria, does it really give you the confidence to serve with heart and might? And have we truly built a nation where peace and justice would reign? So those are the things we'll ask ourselves. But congratulations to him once again, the city boy, as he's fondly called. He's had his day in the sun. He's given a conciliatory speech, called on others to come work with him. But the long road to collective development is quite a long one, and we need to be building those blocks as we go on. The international community, yes, reactions. You can see there the Financial Times said just edged to victory. Let's see how that pans out. There was also another article on Bloomberg that really berated the system yesterday. I think I saw the article, because also we have to take the media temperature, what the world is saying in general about our elections. The Bloomberg article berated the system, talked about the failure of the technology beavers and all of that. We keep seeing reactions on the international scene, but straight off the bat, he's got his work cut out for him. He has an economy to fix. He has a country to unite. He has a disgruntled youth population. He has to reassure Nigerians. And that is cut out for him. And what we can only support him with are our kudos here and criticisms. And nobody, and I repeat, nobody should gag the press and tell the press not to talk. Because I believe criticisms are fundamental in shaping the narrative of any nation, as well as kudos. And we'll be fair and objective. I, particularly, where he's done well, will be fair with him.
Okay, Ruben, just before you come on, let's look at Business Day newspaper, because the story there just tally with some of the themes we've been discussing all morning. March 11, all our eyes on Lagos, others as battleground shift. Of course, from what we'll be hearing, fire for fire from some of the actors in Lagos. But I think we are not advocating any violence on that day, and I think it should be discouraged. Then also another story, front page of the Business Day, Tinubu's 6 trillion naira challenge. A major challenge awaiting Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Nigerian's president-elect, is petrol subsidy, which is on track to go up 6 trillion naira in 2023. The challenge before Bola Ahmed Tinubu, we've been discussing all morning, and of course, what will happen on March 11 when the governorship election will hold in Lagos and all other states that are not part of the off-season elections. Ruben.
Okay, yeah. Well, talking about reactions, earlier this morning, I tried to give an outline of some of the reactions. We may go back, local and international, as you have tried to do from the review of the newspapers. Locally, we had clearly from General Ibrahim Babangida, who says the APC's victory, Bola Ahmed Tinubu's victory, marks a new dawn for Nigeria. And it is a thing of joy for him personally that this has happened, in his presence, which amounts to an endorsement. And he described the APC president-elect as a performer, urging Nigerians to give him all necessary support. And in fact, he added that he's a good man for the job, saying more or less the same things that President Muhammadu Buhari had been saying. We also heard, for the first time, I may say, from the Vice President of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who had challenged, his former principal to the ticket of the All Progressives Congress. And he said, Bola Ahmed Tinubu becoming president-elect and on his way to becoming president would give Nigerians an opportunity at the advantage of his progressive, welfareist ideas. And then we also heard from the Arewa Consultative Forum. The Arewa Consultative Forum, speaking to Motala, the Secretary General, says that Tinubu should treat Nigeria as one and that he should ignore the voting patterns and make sure that he leads everybody. Well, of course, that's what the president-elect himself has been saying. He's been preaching a message of unity, peace, and prosperity. And then we also heard from Nasir El-Rufai, the governor of Kaduna State, who in the last moments expressed a lot of support for the victory, for the agenda of the All Progressives Congress, and had cause to even criticize certain elements, fifth columnists, as they call them, in the villa, who wanted to sabotage the party. And he says he has no doubts that, Bola Ahmed Tinubu would lead Nigeria right and deliver. Those are the major ones from Lagos, including, as I quoted earlier, the chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria in Lagos, Bishop Adigbite, who said, look, Bola Tinubu is not going to Islamize Nigeria. Nobody should talk about that the Muslim ticket doesn't matter. If he had not Islamized his wife for 40 years, he will not do that with, Nigeria. Although he provided a caveat that he's a friend of the Asiwaju Bola Tinubu family. So this is about friendship and loyalty to a friend. So on the local scene, apart from the president, that has been the major thing, apart from also Desmond Elliott leading a street dance in Surulere, Nollywood girls. In fact, one of them appointed herself, said she will be ambassador to Togo. They started sharing positions. So that's the kind of excitement.
She's canvassing for a position.
Well, no, she says she's volunteering to be ambassador to Togo. Another one is a specialist in Ashwebi, inviting people that this is the Ashwebi, and the color, as we indicated yesterday, is blue. Anyway, internationally, we have heard from the U.S. State Department. The U.S. State Department was saying that, look, this is an important moment, period, the statement used. But they made a point that Nigerians should explore, aggrieved persons should explore, establish mechanisms for dispute resolution. And what are those mechanisms? It's simply another way of saying go to court. Yes. Don't take the laws into your hands. But what I find interesting in the statement from the State Department, U.S. State Department, is that they singled out the media for special praise and civil society for the role that they have played so far in this election. Not many of the stakeholders want to give credit to the media or to the civil society generally, but it was good that that was pointed out in the statement by the U.S. State Department. The State Department also pointed out the role of youths, and that's something that we should not overlook. The youth bulge, the zeal of the youths, the determination of Nigerian youths, since, of course, they constitute the majority of voters in this election, between the age bracket of 18 to 35, 34. If you stretch it further to 49, then you have 18 to 49 constituting about 75% or close to of the people that voted, that turned out for this election, including those who were tactically or structurally disenfranchised. And then, of course, we heard from Rishi Sunak, who put out a tweet. Rishi Sunak is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And he made a point about looking forward to partnership with the new government in Nigeria. Prosperity. He talked about security and trade ties between Nigeria and how all of this can be promoted. The emphasis on how the reaction has been missed, however, you will see it more in the newspaper reactions. Some of the newspapers are not enthusiastic about the election. The New York Times, for example, described Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu as a divisive figure. A divisive figure between those who think he can lead and those who think that, his emergence will divide the country. Chatham House attacked INEC in one of their reports. They accused INEC of failing to meet its own guidelines and regulations, short of saying INEC broke the law in this election.
Which Nigerians have been talking about anyway.
Reuters had a story saying Bola Tinubu from Godfather of Lagos to President-elect. The meaning of that their title, of that their story, is in the subtext. Bloomberg focused more on the challenges ahead. He says that this president-elect, he will have to address Nigeria's $13 billion debt. And that is the major work ahead of him. They went a step further to say that this presidential election in Nigeria has been very messy. I'm not too sure that many people would disagree with that. Then, Financial Times, I think you had that on the screen. If you look at the details, Financial Times' conclusion is that this has been a deeply flawed election. And they described the president-elect as a wealthy political fixer. So almost suggesting that the election was fixed. The BBC relied more on statistics. BBC says, look, Nigeria has elected a president with the lowest turnout since 1999. And they pointed out that with 8.7 of the votes, that's just about less than 10% of the total number of registered voters at 93.4. And that if you look at the percentage of people who voted, not more than 27% in a country of over 200 million people. So this is how it's been reported. Not so much enthusiasm on the part of the international community. The leaders that have issued statements, well, that's in line with diplomatic tradition. You don't expect the State Department or Rishi Sunak to be criticizing Nigeria. That will not be part of his brief. But the newspapers took a different tack, and they were more frontal in trying to raise questions about the process. So what is the sum of all of this, in my view? The sum of all of this, in my view, is that INEC, if they read newspapers in INEC, should take all of these on board to know that the international community is watching and that people are reacting and that there have been reactions. As for the president saying, thank you, Lord, good Lord, thank you, no incident, no accident. No, well, President Buhari, I'm not playing the devil's advocate. He's leader of the country. Do you expect him to admit that there were problems? But as for knowing the information, that's not a problem. The Department of Media and Publicity in the State House every morning prepares for any president that is there a summary of what is in the news. Every morning, he gets the blue paper from the Nigerian Intelligence Agency. He gets the brown paper from SSS. He gets papers from DMI, all of them stating security situation, the big news in the country. In fact, part of the job of the media advisors is to also do analysis for the president, sometimes to even do one-on-one briefing with him. So, and that's why Garuba Shehu was telling us the other day that the president loves cartoons, but as president, he's more than cartoons. He has an overload of information so that he can have the required helicopter view. So then let us say maybe the president doesn't know what's going on. Of course he knows.
Just before you come on, let's look at New Telegraph newspaper, where Femi Falana, senior advocate of Nigeria, is being reported alleged attempt to hack into INEC server should be probed. Falana, just to bring that to the discussion.
Well, thank you very much. I was just going to add to, or just respond to what the doctor said initially, and to verify as well that actually on the day of election, they'd put up a picture of the president watching the updates of the elections on NTA. So he was definitely aware and kept abreast of everything firsthand. He was watching with his family, and the picture is out there. I was going to ask the question, but maybe it was being loyal. I zoomed in to see the particular TV station he was watching. Maybe afterwards he switched. But yes, just to mention that he's very aware, and also to agree that we have to praise youth involvement in these particular elections. I don't know if you saw it, Mr. Feni, but some young people traveled from different parts of the world, diaspora youth, to come back to exercise their franchise. I thought this was something to applaud. There was a particular story I saw on one of the government officials who said her daughter came 3 times just to ensure that, so the first time to register to vote, second time to pick up a PVC, the third time specifically to ensure that she was part of the electoral process. So it also demonstrated just how keenly the young people in Nigeria wanted to be involved in these particular elections. Whatever the outcome has been, again, that's up for conversation, and also to analyze to see how we can prevent such, or perhaps do better in a few days when we go to the polls for the gubernatorial and state house of assembly elections. With regards to the story of Mr. Femi Falana, Rufai actually brought up that conversation with Mr. Bwala as to the news that had been making the rounds around hackers and arrests being made, even though there have been denials. But it is worthy of a probe. When the failings of technology, or perhaps the downside of technology, are issues around hackers. A few weeks back, Royal Mail of England got hacked, and it was also subject to investigation, and also they were trying to also somewhat get money from them. So this happens in different parts of the world. It's not new to Nigeria. Therefore, rather than dismissing, as we've seen in the past, let us call for a probe. And I'm glad that he's speaking up. He's never been one to shy away from taking up very topical issues. So I hope that INEC and EFCC and the security agencies will probe this particular accusation. It's not without reason. Now, moving on to the window story, away from Nigerian elections, we talked about the window story of this day, which caught my attention earlier on, and I'm glad that we brought it up, is the effect of the cash and fuel scarcity on private-led business ventures. It talks about the fact that the private sector slumped for the first time in almost 3 years. So even worse than it did during COVID times, with a percentage purchasing managers index of 44.7% as opposed to 55.3% which they did the previous month, owing to the cash crunch and fuel scarcity. Of course, elections have dominated conversations, so we haven't really paid attention to the fact that we still have the Naira scarcity plaguing us. We still have some queues, definitely a lot shorter, but still on our roads.
Are you still using the Naira? I use cards these days.
We use cards
to buy yam, to buy pepper.
I saw a news story of it.
Yes, you go to the market to buy pepper.
Supermarkets. I'm talking about supermarkets.
Market is market.
No,
you go about buying pepper.
No, because when my children say we want to go to the market, give us cash, I don't have. So when I go to the supermarket, I just buy the yam, buy the pepper, and pay with my card. All of you should go cashless, Ruben.
So we want to go cashless.
Do you also buy meat?
No.
And fish?
Of course, they are there in the
and Maggi? And you carry bag?
No, you don't need to carry a bag.
We want to go cashless. The challenge here is that we do not have the infrastructure to support the cashless.
But there's improvement now.
There is improvement.
There is improvement in the workings of the POS and in the
but there's still
in the
many
various
failed transactions,
points.
and many people have experienced that.
What you have said is very germane, because that report, the window story of this newspaper, S&P, how Nigeria's fuel crisis, cash crunch, ended 31-month growth in business activity. It says PMI at worst level since pandemic.
That's huge. So, and the reason I'm bringing that up is that sometimes when we focus, before election, the reason for the Naira disease, one of the reasons, I'm not saying the reason, one of the reasons was also to stall vote buying. So there was an election element to it. And we had been promised that we would see an improvement in terms of the new notes being widely distributed. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. Yes, there's a big case now for going cashless and using other payment channels. But the truth is that a number of transactions in Nigeria are still done with cash, as we have seen the results here on the effect on the private sector, on businesses. And I'm sure that if we interviewed SMEs, small and medium-scale enterprises, they will tell you how far-reaching the effect of this Naira crunch is. The CBN has been quiet, and we're looking forward to them now. Let us address this. We cannot sweep away a problem to face another issue. We must sort everything out and bring everything to the table. As some people jokingly said after the election, okay, election is over, can I have my money now? Can we get our money now? Can we see the Naira notes, the 200 Naira notes that were promised that would see, will be reintroduced? We still have a few more months to go. So let us have conversations around that. Fuel scarcity, let us have conversations around that so that these effects has been highlighted by S&P Global. We wouldn't be seeing that again. It's such a disservice to small organizations who have a plethora of issues to deal with in running a business in Nigeria.
Well, you are talking about S&P, but the story that I saw was that, look, the stock market, as it's losing, has recorded heavy losses since the announcement was made, and that about 29 stocks.
Which announcement are you talking of now?
The announcement of the APC presidential candidate as president-elect, and that about 117 stocks are completely flat. Because part of the narrative has been that, since the APC won, there's been excitement in markets outside. But on the stock market in Nigeria, the story out there is that, look, there's been negativity within a few hours after that was announced. But the point about, fuel, about cash, Naira scarcity and all of that, well, I thought this had been addressed by the president-elect in terms of his agenda. One of the things that the APC has said is that, they don't think that the timing of the Naira redesign is in order. And some people are already jubilating that once the president-elect is sworn in, one of the first things he will do will be to reverse that policy or take a decision to say, look, the old notes should still be out there.
That's 3 months away.
Well, as for fuel subsidy, as for fuel, it's one of the campaign issues pushed by the APC president-elect when he said, well, he's going to make sure that daily production goes up to 2.3 million barrels per day. He also talked about investing more in gas infrastructure. I'm trying to quote from his 80-page manifesto titled Renewed Hope. And another thing he said is also relying on the fact that the Dangote refinery will come on stream. And his argument is that that would address, the challenge of fuel scarcity. Other things he has talked about, will seem to include restructuring, which is something that the APC abandoned. Many people will know Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his passion for true federalism, as he calls it. And I think he has a book of essays on this idea of federalism, which is something that he has been pursuing since he became governor in 1999. But questions have been raised in terms of his agenda. One, his manifesto, he has been criticized on the ground that his manifesto is a bit vague about what he intends to do about corruption. And, I've seen that criticism, that what exactly does he want to do about corruption, that what he has in that manifesto does not have the necessary depth. But when he gets there, we'll see how he will handle that. But of course, he has talked about the usual things, about infrastructure, about education, about prosperity for Nigerians. But they may not have been talking about it. But one other thing that he has been passionate about has been a special status for Lagos. Maybe as president of Nigeria, he will realize that objective of ensuring a special status for Lagos.
I would also like to harp on restructuring. So now that the APC have been able to retain power, would they at least now work on the 8 years long promise of restructuring? Because this same APC government then said they were going to restructure. Nasir El-Rufai put out a document as regards it.
No, there was a committee set.
There was a committee?
Headed by El-Rufai ahead of the 2019 election.
Yes.
To show that they still have restructuring in mind. But 4 years thereafter,
down the line, nothing was done. So I hope, because you see, everybody will be judged by their campaign promises. And we remember those promises. We'll be waiting here to be able to interrogate the issues. We must not hear about ASU strike, because we heard the promise. 4 years. 4 years will be 4 years, including the blip that even said, it's 8 years you will use in Yoruba, or do mejo, okay, they said it's a slip of tongue. 4 years will be 4 years. We'll be waiting for the student loans. We will also be waiting for the agricultural board. We'll be waiting for the National Guard that is going to set up to fight insecurity. These are things we'll be waiting. So in terms of setting the agenda, we're already setting it.
Absolutely.
We'll be waiting for the temerity to be able to fix the economy and fix the issues with debts. We'll be waiting for job creation.
Yes.
And probably, maybe in the spirit of fairness and starting on a new slate, maybe the National Bureau of Statistics can even avail us the exact job numbers now, so we even have data to work with.
Well,
okay, we have to go.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Ifeni, for taking us through today's newspapers.